My name is Seth Kibel, and this is the second in our series of artist chats with the fabulous musicians who comprise this year's musical component, the Washington Jewish Music Festival of J by J, the virtual J by J festival. Now, look, a couple of orders of business before I introduce our special guest today. First of all, if you are watching this live, this is an interactive presentation. Now, we're doing this in the Zoom webinar format, which means I cannot see you, I cannot hear you. Nonetheless, I fully encourage you to avail yourself of Zoom's Q&A feature. I know everyone is a Zoom ninja by this point, but real quickly, it varies device to device. But you scroll your mouse, your cursor, your finger, whatever, to either the top or bottom of your screen, and a menu bar should pop up. And one of the buttons in that menu bar says Q&A. Click on that, the Q&A box pops up. You can clickety-clack, type any message, comment, question you want in that Q&A. We may not see it right as you type it, but I promise at several points during today's interview, I will go and check that Q&A box and relay any questions or comments to Niki Jacobs, our guest of honor. Next important order of business. I know you already know this, but it bears repeating. We are here because of the virtual J by J festival. It's an incredible thing. Over 40 different movies and over a dozen different unique musical concerts at your disposal from now until December 10th. Now, let me just walk you through this. You go on your little electronic device or whatever to jbyj.org. That's JXJ. Hey, there's Niki Jacobs. jxjdc.org, and that gets you everything you need. Now, there are lots of ways to view the festival, but I cannot, hey, who's that guy? I cannot recommend enough that what you really need to do is go up here to Festival Tickets and Passes, click on that, and then get one of these all-access passes. It's just $90. And for $90, you get unlimited access to all the movies, over 40 independent films, all the concerts, all the talks, all the everything associated with this festival, and you can watch pretty much any of it whenever you want during the duration of the festival. It's an incredible value. Look, all that stuff on Netflix, the new season of The Crown, The Queen's Gambit, it'll still be up there at the end of the month. So do yourself a favor, at the end of this artist chat, if you haven't done so already, go to jxjdc.org, purchase one of those all-access passes. Having said that, should you wish to take more of an a la carte approach, under the festival tab here, click on music. Here are all the musical performances, and right down here is Niki Jacobs presents the Mauthausen Trilogy. That is the performance we're going to be discussing momentarily. Okay, having done that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce, all the way from the Netherlands, Niki Jacobs. Now, Niki, what time is it over there?
Let me just check to be sure. It's 4:06.
4:06 p.m., right?
p.m., yes, p.m.
Okay,
so
good. Okay,
the
that's not
evening
too
is
unreasonable an
starting.
hour. That's good.
No, it's fine.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I know as musicians, we'd love to play for people in person, and we miss it terribly. But there are some advantages of these kind of virtual festivals. And one of them is we can get a tremendous artist like you with your entire band to give a command performance as part of J by J.
That is quite special. That is absolutely true.
Now, look, I want to talk about your music because I watched your entire performance and it's phenomenal. But as I mentioned to you before we started, the first thing that struck me about your performance was the setting, even before the first musical note was played. So tell us, where and how was this filmed? Give us some background.
So happy to. Well, since, of course, everywhere around the world, everything is closed, or not everywhere, but in Holland and, of course, in the US still too, Our or my local theater, which is a beautiful venue, is also entirely closed. And when Ilya Tovbis, the musical director, asked me to maybe consider doing like a digital performance or a virtual performance, the first thought I had was, okay, this has to be at my local theater. And then I called the director there, or like, how do you say? Yeah, like the director, and asked her. And she initially said no. She said, it's not possible. We can't do this. It's too, it's, you need technique. People come in, and it's like, we can't because Corona, bloody COVID, blah, blah, blah. So I had like a second wish where I would want to perform. And then as I'm in the process of trying to arrange that, she calls me back like 5 days later or something. She's like, you know what? We talked about it, and you're so welcome to come and to record the show in our theater. And I had already asked like some filmmakers to help me out, and I had asked like a sound guy to help me out, sound engineer. How do you say this? Like
Yeah, yeah. Sound
technical
engineer, audio
engineer.
engineer.
Yeah, and then a really good friend of mine that I have done some touring with in the Netherlands. Like my previous tour was with him as like light developer and engineer. And I asked him, would you for one night like help us out and make something really beautiful? And everyone said yes, and everyone was available, and we were able to make something, I think, really beautiful for the audience.
Oh, it's fantastic. As I mentioned to you, I'm insanely jealous because, my J by J set, I think musically is pretty darn good, but
Yeah,
it's
no, of
filmed
course.
here in my basement and
Yeah,
there's like books lying everywhere. There's an exercise bike,
yeah,
but
it's,
yours was just so pristine. And like I said, we're going to get to the music momentarily,
yeah, no
but
worries.
everything about your video was just so high quality that the video quality was tremendous, multi-camera shoot, and the audio quality was just pristine. It was such a high quality
Thank you so
production.
much.
Now I want to make sure I say this right because I'm a New Yorker, so I want to say Harlem, but
You
you're in the
should.
original place. You're in,
Yeah, I am. Yeah, in
pronounce it for me again.
Haarlem.
Harlem, which
Yes,
is the original namesake for New York Harlem.
absolutely. Yeah, it's like where Breukelen and Brooklyn and Harlem and Haarlem came from.
Excellent, fantastic.
Absolutely. Yes.
Did that theater like have you been there before? Does it have memories for you? Does it have
Oh
significance for
yes.
you?
Oh yes. It's a very important place actually because it's. I mean, Haarlem. It's a nice. It's a city, but it's like a province town to me. You know, like I've been in New York. I've lived in New York for a while, and you can't compare it with like a metropole or something. But it is a lovely, lovely town. And one of the things that I like specifically about it is there is a high amount of culture going on here. So we have like the theater house for plays, and then we have the Philharmonie where we recorded the shows. And this specific hall was designed with a lot of wood, especially for like acoustic ensembles. So also for the recording, the only thing that we used was like a small A&R speaker that I used for the vocals. This is very
Wow.
technical, but it's just nice to
Yeah.
know. And like a really little bass amp for the cello. The rest is acoustic. It was recorded like with like two mic rooms, like ambient sounds,
Mm-hmm.
and like there was no we didn't have any like PA system rolling or anything. So the hall itself, it's like a warm bath to play in. Like it's
Oh, it sounded
amazing.
just
Yeah.
exquisite. I think warm
Yeah.
bath is actually a very
Right? That's the feeling.
accurate description.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like how you want to feel like when you like enter something, you're like, oh yes, and there we go. Yeah.
Now, your program,
Yes.
the Mauthausen Trilogy,
Yeah.
Mauthausen Trilogy, as we'll
Yeah.
talk about, is
Yeah.
pretty heady stuff. It's a very
Yeah.
emotional, very evocative program.
Yes.
And one of the things that
Yeah.
I loved about your set is you made the interesting and very wise decision, I thought, to introduce the entire program ahead of time. In other words, the first
Yes.
five odd some minutes of your video are
Yeah.
you explaining what everyone's
Yeah.
about to hear, and that way, once the music starts, it's just continuous, and you
Exactly.
don't kind of break the mood by explaining
Yeah.
things as you go on. So I don't want you to have to repeat yourself too much, but
Hmm.
could you give people a little synopsis of
Sure.
what your program actually is, because it's not just an
Absolutely.
ordinary concert.
No, I agree. And I really thought about this. Like also for us, and this is, I think, of course it's the same, but I think in Europe, this is a more prominent aspect of it, that 75 years freedom, like we actually didn't celebrate that this year due to COVID, but it was the plan to do it. So the program initially was based around that theme. And then as we proceeded in making it, I realized that it was way more about something larger than that. So not only um, the celebration of 75 and to commemorate that 75 years of freedom, but that it really has an it's a hard word. I'm trying to think of the word in English. I'm sorry. I'm trying thinking in English, but then I think in Dutch, and then it's hard to translate. um, like when you have something to say, I don't know if there's a proper word for it, but we had something to say with this program.
You had a message. You had a
Yeah,
message. Definitely.
exactly. And the content of the performance is that we sort of like musically explain how we think, um, like a period of time, basically almost 2 centuries. Sorry, a century has felt or have felt. So we start in around 1868 or 68, in Europe, where it's like sinister and like fascism is like sort of brewing. And like, I feel like if you would compare it to like a weather day, it's like a gray, cold, like, one of those days when it's not raining, but your face is wet anyway, because like, it's like, it's, I don't know, unkind weather, like really harsh, like how Europe was back then.
Yeah.
And then, so it's basically like, you can divide it in 3 pieces. So we start in Europe, and this is also the same period of time, like 1868 till 1914, when, of course, your family probably, like your ancestors, left Europe and arrived in the U.S.
Indeed.
So I mentioned that, like in the music, you can feel like that there's like a big progression going on, but we as an audience stay behind. So we see like our people leave and we're not leaving. So this is an important part of it. And then we slowly, in the second part of the concert, we enter into the Second World War and the Mauthausen Trilogy. And the Mauthausen Trilogy originally was, of course, sang in Greek by by Maria Farandouri,
Mhm.
and the composer Mikis Theodorakis, who used the poetry of Iakovos Kambanelis, who was a survivor of the camp. Um, and the Mauthausen camp, just for people that don't have any clue on what it is, which is absolutely fine because many people in Holland don't know what this camp was about. It was a quarry. So people would have to carry like these ridiculous heavy boulders up these stairs, like 180 steps, to basically pave Vienna, which is insane if you think about this. So in the second part, we perform the whole trilogy, which is 4 songs, of course. And what I feel is one of the most beautiful things about it, it's that it's heartbreaking and that the lyrics are terrible, but at the same time, they are like, over that, there's like this line of love and beauty that eventually conquers like the shadows, which I find very, very beautiful, like, and it can be any time in your life that life is hard and you can still like manage to, I don't know, understand that love sort of conquers everything. It just sounds really like, how do you say this? Like too much, but I really think that that is true. And then in the third part, we arrive in the US, basically. The boat hits the shore and we enter like your world where you, like your family was able to, like, I know, do like through hard times, but in a completely different way. Your like ancestors were able to create life and to continue to live and to like, it's really, have you been, this is really like, let me finish this first.
Sure, sure.
So yeah, so we basically celebrate the glory of Jewish life and music in all its like greatness. Yeah, which is a weird word as well.
Hmm.
Sorry.
No, it's a
Does that help?
tremendously evocative and powerful program. And like you said, this
Yes.
is one of those programs, by the way, not, I mean, all of the J by J concerts are fantastic. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, no,
But
of
some of them,
course.
including mine, I think you can listen to in bits and pieces. You know,
Yeah,
take
yeah.
10 minutes, listen here, take 15 minutes, listen here. Nikki's,
Oh,
you
interesting.
really need to, you should set aside an
Yeah,
hour, you know, a
yeah.
nice quiet place, lower the lights to immerse
Interesting.
yourself in this
Yeah.
really emotional experience. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about the centerpiece, the Mauthausen Trilogy.
Yes.
As you said, the original poetry was in Greek, but you're
Yes.
singing them in Yiddish.
Yes.
Now,
But
how did that happen? Who did the translation? Is it a literal
yeah,
translation?
it is. Yes. So I'll tell you about that. Well, this was one more aspect that why I chose to like make this connection to all these pieces with as a fundament, sing it in Yiddish. And of course, in our community, your community, my community in Jewish music, we don't feel that that's anything special maybe anymore, right? Because I always perform in Yiddish.
Oh,
But
it's still special.
okay, well, I like to believe that we all understand what we're doing, but I do think that outside of that ring or like center, there's so many people that have no idea what this is about or what that language, and especially in Europe, even less than in the US, people don't know even that this was a language spoken in Europe for like 10 centuries or something. So, having said that, when we first started to think about doing the Mauthausen trilogy, it was there is one translation made in Dutch that I don't like because I don't think it's beautiful poetry. So I didn't want to do that. Also, I didn't really feel that connection to it. And then I heard, and this is quite cute actually, that my first Yiddish teacher of Amsterdam, she was a native speaker, and her name is Willy Briel, that she translated the Mauthausen trilogy for a choir, like a Yiddish choir in Amsterdam.
Hmm.
And then I got wind of that and I was like, huh, that's interesting. So somewhere on some pile of papers, there are these Yiddish lyrics just waiting for me. Of course, I hoped so. And then I had a nice conversation with like the director of the choir, explained her what I wanted to do, and she allowed me to use these lyrics, which is great because it also felt so wonderful to have them being translated by like a native speaker.
Hmm.
So to really know like that she really in her heart, I mean like her cells knew what she was writing, just helps to like um bring out the content and bring out the story.
Well, yeah, I mean, Yiddish translation is an art in and of itself because
It's
Yiddish is
so
such an
beautiful.
idiosyncratic language.
Exactly. And it works. Like it really like, and of course we, if you would ever listen to the original Mauthausen trilogy, and maybe you have, I don't know, you will hear what we did also to it. Like also musically, we really changed it around. And I feel that it really enhanced the text, like the lyrics, because I really understand what I'm saying.
And there's such a, I kept on getting this kind of, and part of it is because I know the history, such a pan-European vibe from
Yeah.
this work, because we've got the Dutch vocalist and musician performing her adaptation in Yiddish
Yeah.
of a Greek composition
Yeah.
about the experience of a Greek concentration camp survivor in Austria. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
who
just,
wasn't even Jewish. Like
yeah,
Cambanelis himself wasn't even Jewish. So, which is also weird in a way.
yeah, that's fantastic. Well, let's actually switch gears now and talk
Yeah.
about something much more uplifting and much more positive, which is your incredible band. I'm gonna take the liberty of just butchering some
Please.
names here.
Yes, do
So
it.
obviously we've got Niki Jacobs on vocals and acoustic guitar. She does both amazingly well. We'll talk about Niki's musical background, I think, in our next segment. And then you've got Ro Kraus on viola, also vocals.
Yes.
Peter Van Os on accordion. Then Ruet Brules. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Almost. Ruud.
Okay, this trumpet player, I don't want to pick favorites because the entire
Oh, you are allowed to pick favorites. He's
I am
our all-time favorite of all
the
of us.
entire band is amazing, but this trumpet
I
player is something else.
know.
In fact, in a minute, I definitely want to come back to him because I have
Yes.
questions about
Yes,
Root.
do it.
And then
Yes.
Emil Visser on cello. I'll ask some questions in a minute, but can you just tell us generally about this band and how you
Yeah.
guys came together? Is everyone Dutch? Is everyone live in
Um, yeah,
Haarlem?
we don't all live in Haarlem. We are all Dutch, I think. Although I do think we all have some backgrounds that are like European, but not necessarily Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have been working with them for a long time. I think for over 10 years now. And then I have also like in between worked with other bands, but I always come back to them because they're my favorite people. And what I love the most actually about all of them, and I think it's one of the strengths that we have, is that each of them individually really has their own sound. And it's a weird orchestration, right, for an ensemble. There's no
Mm-hmm.
double bass, and there's like a lot of like melody instruments. But in this program specifically, for some reason, we were able to really um, allow all of us to like lift and shine at moments and then like really be like the fundament again for the other person to like uh, have the melody over. So I think we're very, and this is why I like them so much, because they're as people great because they do that as well, you know, like they're, which is I know this sounds weird because I know there are fantastic musicians that are maybe assholes in real life, but I like to work with nice people. And I think the respect and the love that we have for each other, we also have for each other's music and each other's sound, which sort of allows a certain freedom. Although this program is pretty arranged, it still has like you can still breathe throughout. And I think that the breadth of everything is what is so great about them.
Yeah, and it sounded like, and I know this can sometimes be deceptive, but it sounded like a fairly egoless ensemble.
It's
Meaning,
completely
as you said,
egoless.
everyone, it's such a
Exactly.
precarious instrumentation. Like
Exactly.
all it would take is kind of one person to overplay or kind of overstep their
Exactly.
bounds, and it feels like the
Yes.
house of cards would fall down, but that never
Exactly.
happens.
No. And the funny thing is, or and this is the interesting thing, it literally never happens. Like, you know, we performed this show, let me think, when was this? Like 2 weeks ago in a beautiful synagogue in Amsterdam, by the way, which is great. And this was the first time we played for audience again, like 30 people, which is nothing, of course. And we were all a little bit nervous because we haven't done that in like 9 months, and we're excited. And we also had the experience of like playing that piece in the theater where it came together so beautifully that we were like, yeah, we did that once, but what's going to happen? And then it was the same, not the same, of course, because it's different, but like especially specifically that point what you're pointing out is like we're all there basically for each other. Yeah, which sounds weird, and I know I have the melody, like I am the lead, of course, vocally, but it doesn't feel that way. Like it feels like we're a, like there's uh equality, how do you, what would you
Mhm. Yeah,
say,
yeah, 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 yeah.
equality, and like a certain like amount of like, it's just, it's really, it's been for me one of the most special projects I've ever had the chance to work on.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's see. I want to highlight a few things. As I mentioned, Root
Yes.
rules, the trumpet player.
Rules. Yes.
My goodness. And this
I
guy, like,
know.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but like he's obviously an incredible trumpet player and has great chops and can read,
Yes.
great experience. But there were just a couple of moments where he does a few things when suddenly I kind of did a little head spin and I'm like, oh, this guy's a jazz cat.
Oh yes,
Like
he is.
he really, you could tell, like he can
Hmm.
tear it up. He's
Oh
quite a
yes.
player.
He's like an absolute jazz cat, and that's also so interesting. Like I never think in idioms, like musically. I feel that everything could it, and which is not true, of course. You can't connect everything like musically. It's not true. I know that it's not true, but I just like to let go of any kind of idiom and to bring just someone's ears to what I want, like musically. So Ruud, he is possibly one of Europe's best trumpet players. Like that's not a joke. Like he is
No, I'm not surprised having heard
no,
him. I'm not
like
surprised at all.
he's a member of the WDR Big Band, which is like the Westdeutsche Rundfunk Big Band, which
Hmm.
is like the highest, basically the highest the highest thing you can get ever as a job, as a musician,
Hmm.
basically a jazz musician. And he's like a solo trumpetist for that big band. Like this is like he's a jazz cat. Like he's like a jazz dude. And but it doesn't matter. But because he just is Ruud. So he brings what he brings. And that's what I like so much about it. Or about him.
And then you have Emil Visser listed as
Yes.
cello, but
Yeah.
really it should be cello and percussion because he's
True.
kind of almost like the drummer of the ensemble as well.
And the bass player.
Yeah, really,
Yes.
yes.
I know. It's so true. Yeah.
Okay, so look, at this halfway point, I just want to remind anyone who happens to be seeing this live. Now, if you're seeing this live, that means it is Sunday, December 6th, 12:27 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are watching this live and wish to add anything to the discussion, any questions or comments for Niki Jacobs, you can please go ahead and do so. If you're on Zoom, you can hit that Q&A button on Zoom. That Q&A window will pop up. You can type any questions you want, and I will make sure to relay them to our guest. If you're on the Eventive platform, you can still do that. There's a chat function on Eventive, and Alexis Rodriguez with J by J is monitoring it and will relay any questions here as well. Okay, Niki, let's talk about you now. Now, I cheated. I read your bio, but honestly, even if I hadn't read your bio, just by watching your performance, I think I'd be able to piece a lot of it together. I'd be like, oh, this is clearly a vocalist who has a lot of classical training. Oh, yeah, but it sounds like she's done some jazz. Oh, but wait, she's definitely immersed herself, in Yiddish culture and Yiddish art song. And then I read your bio, and that's pretty much the case. So tell us a bit about your musical background. As I said, you started out as a classically trained vocalist?
Yeah, I went to conservatory when I was way younger. And I studied classical singing, absolutely. But at the same time, I had always, like, since I was 14, had a big interest in Jewish or like Jewish music and Eastern European music. So I would sing that a lot, like, and still like weird pronunciation, of course, in my Yiddish because I didn't speak it back then. And at the conservatory, I discovered pretty soon that that was not my world. And I was looking for a place where I could really learn like Yiddish folk songs, which is a weird choice to make, I know, but I really wanted to do that. So I went to my first like master class kind of a thingy in London. At the SOAS University, there was like a big Jewish festival kind of a thing, and it was like this was like an epiphany. All of a sudden, I walk into this world where there's like my people performing the music that I want to learn. And I was like, oh my God, does this exist? Holy shit, this exists. And that like opened up my world. I had no idea that that was around. And as soon as I really figured out that that was there, and there's like a world, this is 20 plus years ago, right? So 20 years ago, that there was a world out there where people actually played these songs and learned these songs and learned this idiom and learned the language. I made like a big shift. I stopped at the conservatory and I went to New York to study there and to do like get lessons and learn from people that I thought were really great. So, and
That's
then
excellent.
And then
You
I
pretty much just answered our first question, which came from Bonnie, who said, "Why did you decide to sing in Yiddish?"
Yeah, well, that's maybe a little bit deeper than that because that was earlier on, even when I come from like Jewish ancestors, but
Mhm.
so from my mom's side, but I was not brought up Jewish at all. And I think this is such a big difference from American Jewish people, like my friends basically in the US, and like being in Holland, where like the Second World War is like, it's still a trauma and it's still
Yeah.
something that is like, you don't, in my family at least, you did not speak about that. You don't say that you're Jewish. Like my mom wasn't allowed to give us Jewish names from her mother,
Wow.
you know, because they were afraid. So during my childhood, this was of course there, but it was not visible, which is weird to be in, right? So it's there, but you're not allowed to really be it at the same time. But then again, musically, there was so many songs that were, my dad used to listen to all kind of Jewish singers or composers, and a lot of Hebrew songs also. So then when I was like 14, 13, 14, I started to play some guitar, and I would sing these songs in Hebrew, like Das Kelbel and stuff, you know, they were like translated to Hebrew. And then I started to do some research, and I discovered that all these songs originally were sang in Yiddish, that they were like Yiddish folk songs. And I was like, oh, that makes way more sense. That's actually like a European language. That's what the family of my grandfather used to speak. And that's what my grandfather as a child learned in like Berlin and when he would be with his family. And I was like, oh, so now I know. And that's sort of how it came about.
And my understanding is, I mean, you studied Yiddish with Zalman Mlotek and Adrian Cooper. I mean, those are some names I think some of our J by J audience will be very familiar with.
They have to be familiar with those names.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did some studying with Zalman and of course also with Adrian. And I had a few lessons from Theodor Beckel at one point. And you know Pfeiffisch Finkel, he's like
Sure.
yeah, so I had some lessons with him upstate New York in his like great house over there. And so and I did a lot of self studying, of course. And yeah, so I went into it.
Can you, I mean, could you actually carry on a conversation in Yiddish in addition to singing wonderfully?
Um, I when I am in it for a while, you know, like in for like a few days or a week, and like surrounded by speaking in Yiddish, yeah. But the hard part is that like in Holland, really nobody uses that language. Like I have a good friend of mine who's a professor in Yiddish, and he helps me with translate. I translate sometimes myself, but
Hmm.
I'm not like a university scholar student. So I'm unsure sometimes about what I'm doing. So I ask him to help me out. I'm more poetic and he's right. That's basically the thing. And so when we do some stuff together, it comes back, but it's really also a matter of practice. So if I don't practice, it like goes to the back of the head a little bit, and then when I'm in it again or when I'm writing something in Yiddish, it comes more to the front. You know what I mean? Like with
Yeah.
it's not like a second language. I wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah. Wow. Now, another thing in your bio that intrigued me, because it's certainly something I'm interested in as well, is it sounds like you had this other musical detour into the world of Romania, Roma, gypsy jazz, as well. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. This was basically how I started like approaching Yiddish songs. And this is what I also said earlier, like how I don't really think in idioms. Like I have never done. So the first project I ever did was combining gypsy jazz with Yiddish folk songs. And it felt really naturally to me. Like this is even longer than 20 years ago. Jesus. This is like 1989 or something. So it's been a while. And I was working at a bar, and I heard like a fiddle player playing like these Stefan Capelli songs, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Those two things sound so familiar together, and they like, it makes so much sense that they come from the same fundament, and like rurally also, like geographically, I mean. And I felt like it was the most logical thing to do, to like connect those two worlds together. And I think I found like, so this violin player who was really into, he specialized in gypsy jazz music. I didn't know anything back then about it, of course. And then uh yeah, we sort of developed like a sound together to really figure out like, so how can we make this like cohesive, so not a crossover, because I don't feel that it's a crossover of two like specific musical idioms. It really feels like it's woven into the same context. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think I
Yeah,
know what you're saying.
yeah. It sounds a little vague maybe, but it was a lot of fun, and I was also happy to leave that behind again.
Yeah. All right, let's see. I've got a few more questions for you. Okay, so this now onto a slightly more serious topic
Yeah, go for
concerning
it.
the Mauthausen
Yeah.
trilogy. And this is something I think about quite a bit, and I'm guessing you do as well. We live in one of the unusual things about the times we're living in today is we are living, I don't want to say this in too callous a way, we are living in the final years of having direct links to the Holocaust.
Yes.
You
You
know,
mean
I
like literal survivors?
literal survivors,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have children, and I can tell from the drawings behind you that you've got some kids too,
Yes.
I'm guessing. And I think about how, in their adulthood, there are going to be no living links to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And that brings to mind a couple of thoughts. First of all, it brings to mind the incredible importance of art like what you're doing to provide a tangible, visceral, living link to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But then I'm also curious if you've had any direct interaction or responses from actual survivors of your performance of the Mauthausen trilogy.
The answer to that, unfortunately, is no so far, because we literally have performed it twice.
Okay,
One was for you guys for the festival, and
well,
the
we're
other
honored.
one, it was the first. It was the first time we did it, the show. And the other one was like a few weeks ago at the synagogue, and the age of the visitors there was also luckily not like 80 plus. So therefore, no, I haven't yet. I do expect that to happen, actually, because I have had that with previous performances that I've done in all
Sure.
Yiddish. Yeah. So, but for this one, I don't have I don't have experience with that yet. No.
I'm willing to bet you'll have some survivors viewing your J by J set because we've got a really we're blessed with a large number of survivors in the Washington metropolitan area, and you'd be surprised how tech savvy many of them are.
I know this from previous performances in the US. I've probably met some of them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So look, one of the last questions I want to ask you, I'm almost loath to ask because I know musicians are getting tired of answering this question, but I
Ask
feel like
whatever.
people want to know it's important, and it's
Yeah.
basically this: how are you doing?
Ah, yeah.
2020 has been
Oh,
obviously an incredibly challenging year for everyone, and every
yes.
person in every walk of life has had tremendous
Absolutely.
challenges. Make no mistake.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
has posed a certain unique set of challenges for those of us in our profession. And I'm not
Yes.
sure how things have been going over in your neck of the woods, but I was wondering if you could talk about how this
Sure.
past year has worked for you, so to speak.
Well, it's as like set aside that like I'm so grateful that like my family is healthy. I'm healthy. We haven't lost anyone, you know? So that's like on top of like what the worst thing that could happen, right? So
Sure.
I'm blessed and very grateful for the fact that none of that has happened. At the same time, it's been really hard. Um, and especially in relationship to work, right? And this is for every musician. And I think I'm not sure if there's a difference in that perspective, but we also don't have like um a political system where art and culture are really appreciated. So, for instance, to compare to Germany, where culture is like embedded in the fundament of like its society, it's a real different experience. In Holland, I think in general, music and arts are seen as a hobby. So there's not a lot of love for people that do what I do. It's just a fact, and I know there are many people that really appreciate it. But in the fundament of society, at its core, I don't think we as musicians or performance artists, could be any kind of art form, are really valued at all. So that's hard in itself already. And I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never taken anything from anyone to be able to live the way that I do, right? And then to really experience that, like, our society um, doesn't value us the same way as they would do with like any other person that makes a living doing
I
its
can
job.
very much relate.
Yeah, for me, like, and of course, like, I had to cancel, like, for instance, we would have been in May at the festival, right? Past May, we would
Sure.
have been there, and we would have had like a tour in the US. I had like 35 concerts lined up in Europe and in Holland. So apart even from the work that got canceled, jobs that fell through, like I have a small vocal teaching thing that didn't happen for a long time. That was all sort of still doable. But for me, actually, the hardest part was to really feel how disconnected society is from arts, and that many people do not understand how fundamental it is to a society. I think that's, for me, that's the hardest part to deal with.
Yeah, I can certainly relate.
Yeah.
Well, look, obviously,
Was
people.
that too grim? Was that too grim?
No,
I'm
no.
sorry.
I definitely know what you're saying,
Can
and,
I
and
can I
I've been
add
getting
one?
similar responses.
Can I
I'm
add
sorry. Go
one
ahead.
thing though? Yeah, just to not have it like feel as like it's a lost cause or something. Because
Yeah.
at the same time, the time that was but it opened up due to the fact that all our schedules fell down. I had the chance to like work with my musicians, really work like as we have never done before, because we never have time to do it that way on like this program. So at the same time, like artistically, I had an experience, we all had an experience that we did not expect to feel or experience. So I also feel so much gratitude for the fact that we were able to do that, so it's like it's a dualistic experience.
I think experiences we didn't expect is a great way to sum
Exactly.
up this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well,
So
look, I really want people to check out your set, and I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But
great.
in addition to that, if people want to know more and learn more and listen more to Niki
Yes.
Jacobs, what should they do?
Well, go to my website, and
Okay. What is your website?
it's www.nikijacobs.nl, not .com. That was already taken.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
There
of
you are.
course, if you like want to support me, absolutely. No, I will look really good in that picture.
You look very happy.
I know, it was a good day.
Yeah.
And I also just made an album from this Ballad of Mauthausen. So if I can like blatantly like how do you say this, advertise my own music for a
Oh,
second,
please.
can I show you, because I'm so proud and so happy.
Yes.
So this is the album. It's like, of
Oh,
course,
wow.
reversed right now. But it has the whole set on it with some explanation of what we're doing. And if people want, they could like email me and I'll send it physically, or I could do like a download. Anything is possible.
So they should just
Um,
contact you through your website here.
yes, they could go to I guess my contact page. You may see it, maybe. Oh, there's an English,
Yep.
probably an English version.
I'm going to translate. There we go.
It should. I'm not sure. I hope this is working. I didn't prepare
There we
any
go.
of
That's
this.
English.
Yeah, and then there's probably a contact thingy or
There it
something.
is. I believe
Eh,
that's it. There we go.
Yeah, so send me an email. All those emails work. It doesn't matter which one you use. And
Excellent.
I guess the top one is the best, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you watching us live, you've got about 4 more minutes to get in any final questions or comments you have for Niki. And while you're furiously typing those away, let me just once again say that this little chat, this is a little sidebar. This is a little appetizer. What you really need to do is start checking out some of the incredible offerings this year's virtual J by J festival has. Now, again, what you need to do is, let me get this going properly, is go to jbyjdc.org. That's JXJ. There's Niki again. jxjdc.org. And that gets you access to the entire festival. Now, there's lots of ways to participate in the festival. Ah, there's that guy. Okay, but the best way is go to the festival tab here, click on tickets and passes, and get the all access pass. This is far and away the best value. It is $90. That's it, no extra fees. And that gets you unlimited access to all the movies, over 40 movies, and all the musical performances. There's over a dozen, and all the chats, everything else at the festival, and pretty much all of it you can access anytime during the duration of the festival, which is through December 10th. Meaning you've got your next week's entertainment all taken care of. All that other stuff you were going to do this week, you were going to watch the Queen's Gambit and all that stuff, that'll wait. Get that all access pass. Now, having said that, if you want to take more of an a la carte approach, or you have your all access pass, go to the music tab here in the festival, and here are all the great musical performances, and there's Niki Jacobs presents the Mauthausen Trilogy, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Okay, so I am doing a final check, and there are no additional questions, so I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, thanks to everyone involved with putting on this year's J by J festival. Of course, the Edlovich DC JCC and the partner organizations, the Poses JCC of Northern Virginia and the Bender JCC of Greater Washington, and of course the fabulous J by J staff, Ilya Tovis, Alexis Rodriguez, and Corrine Williams. And finally, I want to thank our special guest, Niki Jacobs. Niki, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having this talk with me. It was lovely.
All right, we'll see everyone later. So long.
Bye.